I adore my wife. So while she was on a business trip, my children and I decided to surprise her by flying to visit her. But after discovering that certain surprises are only sweet on one side, the idea struck me like a lightning bolt at breakfast. Jake was already half checked out, lost in whatever game he was playing on his phone, while Lily was rummaging about in her cereal. Emily had been away for 3 days. There are still 4 to go for a total of 7. Far too long. "What if we went to see Mom?" I said, putting down my coffee. Lily's eyes grew big. "Like, just show up." "Yeah. We can book flights today. Be there tonight." Imagine her face. Jake eventually looked up. That would be very cool. Which for a 13-year-old indicated that he was truly enthusiastic. I grabbed that and ran with it. Within hours, we were completely crowded. Tickets have been booked. Excitement buzzes through the air like static electricity. I could already see it. Emily opened her hotel room door, gasping in surprise, and pulled us all into a hug. Perhaps even tears. We hadn't had a moment like that in years, but something simple reminded me. Emily did not answer the phone when I called her that morning. Not unusual. I texted myself, "Hey, hope work is going well. I just wanted to hear your voice." No response. Me an hour later. "Children miss you. Please call when you are available." Still nothing. A little strange, but work trips became stressful. I brushed it off. We arrived in Chicago that evening. The air was dense with metropolitan energy, horns blaring, lights flashing, the fresh smell of downtown streets. The youngsters were excited. I rented a car, loaded them in, and entered the hotel's address into my GPS. My pulse quickened while I was driving. I promised myself I wouldn't phone Emily until we were there. I wanted it to be a complete surprise, yet something in me itched terribly. I dialed. No response. I glanced at the time. 9:43 p.m. Not so late. Perhaps she was truly busy or fell asleep early. 5 minutes from the hotel. I tried again, this time going directly to voicemail. That ache was clawing now. Jake and Lily were giggling about something in the back seat, completely unconscious that my grip on the wheel had tightened. When we eventually arrived at the hotel's front entrance, my heart was racing for no apparent reason. I told the kids to wait in the lobby until I obtained our room keys. "We are going to jump out at her, right?" Lily inquired, bouncing on her toes. "Yes," I replied, but my voice was strained. I walked to the check-in desk, forced to smile. "Hello, my wife is staying here. Emily? Carter?" I wanted to surprise her. "Could you just tell me her room number?" The receptionist smiled politely. "I am sorry, sir, but we cannot give out guest room numbers." "Of course." I slid my credit card over. "Could you at least phone her and let her know her husband is here?" She nodded and took up the phone. I observed her dial. "Wait." Then her expression changed. "Oh," she said. Her gaze flickered to me. She isn't answering. My stomach turned. "Maybe she is asleep," I offered. Because what was the alternative? She was ignoring the call. The woman paused, then looked at her computer screen. It did mention she checked in with a companion, though. +1, my vision tunneled. "Sorry." "What?" My voice sounded distant, as if it came from someone else. She blinked. "Yeah. The accommodation is in her name, but she has listed an additional guest. I just assumed you know." I glanced at her before leaving. "Did you just leave? Because what else do you do when you find out that the mother of your children, whom you came across the country to surprise, has booked a lovely hotel? Stay with somebody else." My laughter must have upset the receptionist, as she became nervous right away. I was not even angry yet. I was in that strange state right before the explosion, where everything is too calm within your own thoughts, sir, she asked carefully. "Who is the +1? I inquired in my voice. "Stable to steady." She paused. "I am unable to share that information." I slowly exhaled through my nose. "Right. Okay then. I need a room." Her fingers rushed across the keyboard. I could see she was avoiding eye contact. She knew. She understood what kind of predicament this was. A minute later, I held a room key in my palm. The same floor as Emily's, only a few doors down. Perfect. I strolled back to the lobby, twisting my expression into something that would not startle my children. We are all set. I smiled when I stated this. Let's go drop off our stuff first. Lily virtually skipped next to me. Can we see Mommy straight away? Soon, I promised. We took the elevator up. Jake remained riveted to his phone. Lily was humming a cartoon theme song. They had no idea. Our room was comfortable, tidy, and unremarkable, but I scarcely noticed it. I advised the kids to get comfortable and get whatever they wanted from room service. Then I went into the hallway. Emily's room was located 4 doors down. I moved slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. What was I going to see? A work colleague crashing in her room? An entirely harmless explanation for anything else. I reached her door, room 814. My hand hesitated over the door for a second. Then I knocked. No response. I pounded again, but harder this time. Still nothing. I knew she was inside. I could feel it. I took out my phone and texted her. Me? Hey, I am at your hotel. Open the door. Read. No response. I tightened my jaw so tightly that it hurt. Then, before I could overthink it, I turned on my heel and marched back down the steps. The receptionist seemed astonished to see me again. Hello, I said, slipping my hotel key across the counter. I locked myself out. Can I have a new one? She nodded. She started clicking away on her keyboard, and then I spoke lightly. Oh, and could you please add my wife's room to my key? We always do this when she travels, just in case. I grinned like a man who wasn't about to destroy his entire marriage. She paused then. Beep. She swiped my card, tapped a few more keys, and returned it. Are we all set? She said. Thanks, I responded. Then I went back upstairs to check for myself. My feet felt numb when I returned to Emily's room. The key card was burning a hole in my hand. My pulse wasn't just hammering, it was booming in my ears like if some primitive instinct was shouting at me. This was it. I entered room 814 and inhaled slowly. If I was incorrect, I would appear insane if I was correct. I didn't let myself think about it. I slid the key card in deeply. The green light blinks. I turned the handle and pushed open the door. The first thing I noticed was the fragrance. That peculiar combination of cologne, sweat, and something my brain couldn't quite put a name to. A stench that did not belong in a room where my wife was supposed to be alone. The room was poorly lit, with only the bedside lamp turned on, and I was tangled up in the clean white hotel sheets with Emily and some guy. I didn't notice his face at first. I was too preoccupied staring at her. My wife, the mother of my children, was laying there in nothing but a sheet, hardly covering herself. Her eyes met mine, and for a single second, they were terrifying. Not guilty, not for shame. Annoyance, as if I were the problem, as if my sheer presence was an annoyance. In an instant, her face transformed. She gasped. Scrambling upright and pulling the covers up around her made a difference. Jason, she stammered. Eyes widened. The man next to her shifted, drowsy. He didn't know what was going on yet. I walked into the room, closing the door behind me. Who is he? My voice came out unusually calm. Emily stared between me and him as if she were planning her next step. And then she had the arrogance to tell Jason, "This isn't what it looks like." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh, causing the guy in the bed to finally wake up. He looked up at me, puzzled. Then his face lost its color. Good. I returned my glance to my wife. Really? I inquired, my voice remaining deceptively calm. Because it appears you're naked in a hotel bed with another man. She gulped hard. I could explain. I crossed my arms, then explained. Her mouth opened, closed. I opened it again. She moaned and rubbed her temples as if I were causing her a headache. Jason, You are overreacting, she stated, her voice suddenly firm. It's not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. I felt something crack in my chest. The guy in bed, who finally had the foresight to begin pulling his pants up, cleared his throat. Perhaps I should sit a star down, I growled. He froze. Emily rolled her eyes. This is so typical, she mumbled under her breath. You're always exaggerating. I looked at her, shocked. Emily, I spoke slowly. I flew here with our children to surprise you. Lily and Jake are down the hall, thinking their mother is working hard on a business trip. She flinched at this. Just a second. Her expression stiffened again. Jason, you do not comprehend. No, I think I understand completely. Silence stretched between us until the guy spoke. Look, dude, he said, raising his hands. I didn't realize she was married. Emily spun around to face him. Ryan, shut up. But the harm had been done. I smiled. Slow and chilly. So, Ryan, I mentioned that you assumed she was unmarried. Ryan gulped. Yeah, I mean, she never mentioned her husband or children. Emily's face became pallid. I glanced back to her, my jaw stiffening. Wow. She opened her mouth without making any mention of us. But I wasn't finished. You know what, Emily? I muttered, my voice lowering into a frightening silence. You're correct. I do not comprehend. I stepped closer. Why don't you inform me? Her lips moved, but she had nothing to utter. Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time since I entered this place, she seemed stuck. Her gaze went to Ryan and then back to me, then to the floor, as if she were attempting to rewire reality in her favor. I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to sit in the mess she created. She eventually spoke. Jason, please, she whispered. Here it is. It's not as you think. I laughed. Quiet. Dangerous laughter. Oh, because I believe my wife is having an affair in a hotel room while I am raising our children at home, which seems about right to me. Her lips twitched, but then she did something that almost destroyed me. She softened. Her voice tilted her head slightly and reached for me, as if I were the one being unreasonable. Jason, I made an error, she said, her fingertips brushing against my wrist. But it's not as you think. Ryan shifted uneasily. Emily, I should probably leave. Ryan, shut up. She turned her head toward him so quickly that even I flinched. I observed her. I watched how her body tightened. She gritted her teeth. She was not ashamed. She was upset that she had been caught. I stepped back and shook my head. You know what? Please tell me the truth, Emily. For once. How long has it been going on? She paused, only for a fraction of a second. But it was long enough. Ryan inhaled quickly, then ran his hand through his hair. Oh, he muttered under his breath. Is it that long? I said this while closely watching her. She snapped. Why does this matter? She burst out. Jason, seriously, why are you turning this into a massive betrayal? I felt my entire body become cold. Some huge betrayal, I repeated with a hollow voice. Emily groaned, running her hand through her hair as if I were the aggravating one. Jason, you're a fantastic father, okay? You're an excellent husband. You work hard, but I need it. She stopped herself, squeezing her eyes closed. I took a slow and deliberate step forward. Say it. She did not. So I did. You needed something else. She grimaced, but she did not deny it. I took a deep breath, attempting to control the fire that was climbing up my throat. Emily, our children are literally down the hall right now. Lily was very excited to see you. She could not stop bouncing throughout the plane ride. And Jake. Jesus. Jake put down his phone for more than 10 seconds just to surprise you. She looked away. You weren't supposed to arrive, she muttered. My stomach dropped. I laughed, a choked and disbelieving laugh. Oh my God. You hoped to get away with it. You were just going to return home. We kiss our kids goodnight and climb into bed as if nothing happened. She flinched. And then, as if some demon had possessed her, she raised her chin and said the worst thing she could have ever said. "Jason, you should have told me you were coming." The room tilted. Ryan murmured something under his breath and grabbed his luggage. "Yeah, I'm out." He ran for the door, like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. I didn't even glance at him since my entire universe had tipped on its axis. "Are you in?" My voice cracked. I swallowed. "Are you suggesting it's my fault?" She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "I'm arguing that if you'd told me, this would not have happened." Something inside of me cracked. I took a deep, quivering breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Emily, this did not occur because I showed up. This happened because you made a decision," she scoffed. "Oh, please. As if you hadn't been emotionally checked out in years." That one struck me hard. I took a step backward. "What the hell are you talking about?" She rolled her eyes repeatedly. "Jason, don't act like you're perfect," she said, as if we were discussing something as insignificant as forgetting to take out the garbage. "You scarcely glance at me anymore. You are constantly working and spending time with the children. And She breathed sharply. I simply needed to feel like a woman again. I stared at her. I waited for the regret and awareness to set in, but she just stood there. Her face was fixed in stone, as I was supposed to, simply accept that, as if I was supposed to comprehend. And that's when I realized there was nothing left to salvage. Something within me shattered, not in an explosive manner, not in a way that prompted me to yell, hurl something, or punch a hole in the wall. No, it was the type of respite that made you feel strangely tranquil, the type that converted your soul into ice. I stared at my wife. This woman and I had established a life together, raised children together. I understood she wasn't apologizing. She was not ashamed. She was bored. I let out a breath, slow and steady. I was grounding myself before entering a fight that I knew I was going to win. "Okay," I replied. Emily blinked. "Okay. What?" "Okay," I repeated, tilting my head. "I understand it now." She shifted her weight, crossed her arms more tightly over herself. "Jason, do not do this. Dramatic. You're no longer in love with me." When I interrupted, her lips parted. I took a slow stride forward. "You haven't fallen in love with me for a long time, have you?" Emily's jaw constricted. "That's not right. Simply answer the darn question." She paused, then with a shrug. So nonchalant, it made my skin crawl. She said, "I do not know." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because what else was there to do? Wow. I ran my hand down my face. "You don't know?" Her look became annoyed again, as if I had been dragging things out for too long. "Jason, I hadn't planned for this to happen." She said something like that, which made everything better. It felt great to be wanted. I stared at her. "Do you think I don't want you?" She rolled her eyes. "Not in the same way, not like previously." "You mean not like a stranger on a hotel bed?" She flinched. "That is not fair," I snapped. "Fair?" My voice boomed throughout the room. "Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Is this not a fair scenario for you? Is this difficult for you?" She had the audacity to look aside. "Want to feel like a lady again?" I scoffed. Try feeling like a spouse who recently discovered his wife has been slipping out to hotel rooms with random men while his children plead for her attention at home. She took a long breath and pressed her fingers against her temples as if I was giving her a headache. And that's when I realized she wasn't listening. She was not processing anything. She was simply waiting for me to shut speaking. I stared at her, truly looked at her, at the woman who used to cry whenever we watched sad movies, who used to put small messages in my lunchbox before work, and who used to laugh so hard she couldn't breathe. When Jake told his stupid little jokes at dinner, she wasn't the same person anymore. Perhaps she was, and I wasn't worth it to her anymore. Either way, I was finished. I turned towards the door. Emily stiffened. Where are you going? I hesitated, looking over my shoulder at our children. The ones you seemed to forget existed while you were busy feeling like a lady again. Her features twisted into something hideous. Don't be so emotional, Jason. I giggled under my breath. You have not seen anything dramatic yet. Then I went out the door, leaving her standing in the ruins of everything she had ruined. I walked down the hotel hall. My legs moved as if they were not mine. My body felt heavy, as if someone had attached bricks to my shoulders. But my mind urged me to continue since my children were waiting just down the hall in room 810. Lily was probably sitting cross-legged on the bed, giggling at a cartoon and still bouncing with excitement over the surprise we had planned. Jake was probably halfway through a burger ordered from room service when he texted his friends about how Chicago is kind of sick. Honestly, they had no idea. They had no idea that their mother had just ripped our family apart in a foolish, poorly lit hotel room with a guy named Ryan. I had no idea the father who went out that door was no longer the same man. I paused in front of our doors, 814 to 810, just 4 rooms apart and 4 doors down. Their mother was probably still sitting in bed, irritated with me, raking her hands through her hair. Not guilty. Not heartbroken. Just annoyed. I clenched my jaw so tightly at 8. I finally swiped the key card. Beep! Okay, green light. The door opened, and I barely had time to walk inside before Lily rushed at me. Daddy, have you seen her? She shouted and hugged my waist. Was she that happy? Did she cry? The lump in my throat almost suffocated me. I forced a grin and swallowed the bile in my throat. Not yet, baby, I murmured, sliding my hand through her soft locks. She was busy. We will visit her in the morning, okay? Her small face screwed up in perplexity. Okay, fair enough. But she was so trusting, so innocent, that she simply nodded and let it go. Jake was laying on his bed with one arm behind his head. I am half watching television. So, what is the plan? He asked, putting a fry in his mouth. My thoughts blanked. Plan? There was no plan anymore. I stood in this room, pretending that everything was okay, while their mother was undoubtedly looking for an excuse just 4 doors away. I needed to get them out of here. You want to do something fun? I said immediately, straining my voice to seem light. Normal. Like I don't know. Grab some ice cream. Take a little walk around the city before bed. Lily gasped, as if I had just told her she had won the lottery. Yes. Jake lifted an eyebrow and shrugged. Yes, sure. Why not? Cool. I took my wallet and stuffed it into my jacket. Let's go then. Lily scrambled for her shoes. Jake pocketed his phone, and I took one final look around the room. An hour ago, I thought it was simply a pleasant family trip, but now I'm leaving everything behind because we won't be returning. We stepped outside the hotel, and the night air hit me like a jolt to the system. Crisp, cool, real. I needed it because nothing else felt authentic anymore. Lily took my hand, swinging our arms as we went down the bustling Chicago sidewalk. Jake stuffed his hands inside his sweatshirt, pocket headphones dangling around his neck, and looked around as if he was enjoying it. And me. I was only trying to breathe. I'm trying to ignore the weight of the phone in my pocket, waiting for the expected call or text from her, and suppressing the wrath that's building up in my gut like searing embers. They tried to act normally because they couldn't. No, not yet. Can I have 2 scoops? Lily questioned, virtually skipping alongside me. I forced a smile. You can have 3. Her entire face brightened up. Best night ever? Jake snorted. Dad is in a good mood. We should take advantage before he learns we've been out past our bedtime. They had no idea. We located a small ice cream business. Neon lights illuminate the nighttime streets. The fragrance of waffle cones and sweetness reminded me of a simpler time, when a surprise trip resulted in bliss rather than calamity. We ordered rainbow sprinkles for Lily. Jake received chocolate fudge. I received something I didn't recognize, I simply needed to keep moving, keep the night from sinking into itself. We sat at a little table near the window, and for a time, everything seemed normal. Lily spoke about school. Jake made fun of the fact that she was still coloring outside the lines. I nodded and laughed as I was supposed to, took nibbles of my ice cream, which tasted like nothing. Then my phone buzzed. I recognized who it was before I even looked. My gut wrenched as I took it out. One new message. Emily? Jason. Where are you? I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen before I shut off the phone and placed it back into my pocket. She didn't get to ask that, not after what she'd done. Hey, Dad. Jake's voice drew me back. I looked up. Yeah. He narrowed his gaze at me. Too clever for his own good. You okay? I hesitated before smiling. This time, it's the genuine deal. Yeah, buddy, I replied, looking between him and Lily. I'm perfect because, for the first time all night, I didn't think about her. I was thinking about us and how I was going to get my kids away from her before we returned to the motel. I made up my mind. We were not staying. I wasn't concerned that our luggage was still in the room. I didn't care that we had technically booked the vacation for 2 additional nights. I was getting my kids out of this mess before it got to them. All right, gentlemen, I murmured, forcing my voice to sound casual as we entered the elevator. Change of plans. We're going home tonight. Lily gave a gasp. What? But we've only just arrived. Jake furrowed his brow. Why? What about Mom? Exhaled gently. Something came up. Jake was staring at me. He was not foolish. He sensed something was wrong, but Lily was still too small to notice the cracks in my voice, so I had to keep it that way. But Daddy. She whimpered, her lower lip protruding. We hadn't even gotten to surprise her yet. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know, baby, but we'll visit her once we get home, okay? The elevator rang our floor. We strolled outside, heading for our room. Just keep moving. Keep them distracted. But as soon as we turned the corner, Emily was standing directly outside our room, arms crossed, waiting. Lily's face lighted up. Mommy! She dashed at her, but I grabbed her by the shoulders just before she got there. Go inside, Lil, I spoke, my voice steady, yet firm. Jake, take her. Jake paused, staring between me and Emily. He felt something was wrong, but he eventually nodded. Come on, Lil, but now. I spoke, my gaze never leaving Emily's. Lily pouted as she followed Jake inside. The door closed behind them, and with that, it was just us. Emily gave a quick exhale. What the hell, Jason? I remained mute. I just watched her. She appeared unkempt, with tangled hair and keen eyes, as if she had been pacing since I left her in that room with Ryan. Good, she scoffed. So you aren't chatting anymore? That's quite mature. I tightened my jaw. What do you want, Emily? She flung her arms up. I want to chat. You just burst out like a crazy, grabbed our kids, and vanished. Do you have an idea how that looks? I laughed, a low and sour sound. Oh, I apologize. Is it looking awful for you, Emily? Does it appear like you are a dreadful wife and mother? Because guess what? Yes, you are. Her expression twisted. Jason, lower your voice. Or what? I moved closer, looming over her. You can't tell me what to do anymore. She flinched, her eyes welled up with genuine dread for the first time. Good. She should be terrified of what happens next, not of me hurting her, because I wasn't simply angry. I was finished. Jason. She tried again. This time it was softer. Please, let's go inside to chat. I shake my head. There is nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. Her voice crackled. Jason, this is our family. I let the silence extend, allowing her to squirm. Then I spoke the words I knew would break her. You should have considered it before getting into bed with another man. Her face crumbled. For the first time all night, she appeared to be feeling it, as if she had finally realized what she had destroyed. Unfortunately, it was too late. I retrieved my room key from my pocket, opened the door, and stepped inside before closing it. I returned to her one last time. "I'll file for divorce when we get home." Then I closed the door and looked at her face as it clicked shut. I let out a breath that I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were shaking. My jaw was so stiff it hurt, but my thinking was clear. This was happening. I was finished. There was no going back from it. "Who was that?" Lily inquired from the bed. Her small legs swung over the brink. I turned and forced a smile. "Only someone from the hotel. Perhaps Jake didn't buy it." He sat against the headboard, arms crossed, eyeing me. "Was it Mom?" he asked plainly. I paused. Lying to Lily was one thing. She was too little to comprehend any of it, but Jake saw too much. I sighed and rubbed my palm across my face. Yeah, his expression did not change. "You guys assumed that wasn't a question." I exhaled. "We just had a conversation." He stared at me for a long moment. He said quietly, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" It felt like a punch to the ribs. Lily froze, her large, innocent eyes darting between us. "Wait, what?" "Damn it, Jake." I crouched in front of them and chose my words carefully. "Listen," I said softly, "Mom and I are working things out, but whatever happens, we both adore you." "Okay?" Lily's eyes streamed with tears. "But I do not want you to break up." My heart broke. I drew her into my arms and hugged her tightly. "Oh, baby girl," I muttered and kissed the top of her head. "Everything is going to be okay. I promise." I looked over her shoulder and met Jake's gaze. He was not crying. He was not yelling. He just seemed exhausted. And in that moment, I knew he understood. He realized things couldn't be fixed. He just wasn't prepared to speak it aloud yet. Lily sniffled on my shirt. "Can we go home now?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes, baby. We're heading home." Jake nodded. "Good." And just like that, we decided to leave. I picked up my phone and booked the earliest flight out. One way. There is no comeback, because we were not returning, not to this hotel nor to the city, not for her. By the time we arrived at the airport, the weight on my chest had subsided into something cool, heavy yet steady. It was over. No more pretending. No more pushing through lies. No more waiting for Emily to arrive home. Just to feel like a ghost in my own marriage. The only thing that mattered right now was to get them out. My children. Lily was half asleep against my side as we sat at the gate. Her small finger remained wrapped around my sleeve, as if she was scared I might leave. Jake had his hood up, scrolling through his phone, but I could see he wasn't actually looking at it. He was processing and contemplating. I did not check my phone, not once. I knew Emily was texting and calling. She was probably spiraling, but she was no longer an issue for me. "Do you suppose Mom will come home after us?" Lily muttered, her voice heavy with sleep. I pushed my fingers to unclench. "I do not know, baby." She yawned and rubbed her eyes. "I hope she does." I did not respond since I couldn't lie to her. Jake, on the other hand, snorted behind his breath. "She will not." I gave him a warning look, but he simply shook his head. "She didn't care. We were here, Father. She did not even ask to see us." His voice was calm, yet piercing. "She merely wanted to talk with you." "That's enough." I winced because he was correct. Emily hadn't fought to see them, nor had she called to urge me to hug Lily one more time in order to apologize to Jake and explain herself. She had merely wanted to manage the situation, and when she couldn't, she let them go without even saying goodbye. Lily looked up at me, puzzled. "Mommy still loves us, correct?" My throat tightened up. "Of course she does," I muttered and kissed her forehead. "She always will." And perhaps that was true. Perhaps Emily loved them in her own way. But love was not enough, because if it were, we wouldn't be sitting here waiting for a flight home without her. A flight attendant's voice crackled across the intercom. Our plane was boarding. "Come on." I remarked this while up and collecting Lily's little backpack. Let's go home. Jake did not say anything, just nodded as we headed toward the plane. Something inside me felt lighter because, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just leaving Emily behind. I was taking back my life. The flight was quiet. Lily nestled up next to me, her small body rising and falling in deep, innocent sleep. Jake had his earbuds in, peering out the window, but I could see he was not listening to anything, just watching the dark sky spread out above the clouds. And me. I sat there, staring at the seat in front of me, replaying every event of the last 24 hours as if I were watching a movie I never wanted to see again. Emily's face twisted in annoyance when I caught her, and she made it seem like my fault. She let us depart without saying goodbye to her children. I tightened my fists and forced them to relax. It didn't matter anymore. We were heading home. The trouble was that home was no longer home. Everything changed once we stepped off the plane. We landed early in the morning, and the sky was still gray as I loaded the kids into the car. The trip back felt too silent, as if the entire world knew something was broken. When we pulled into the driveway, Lily stretched and yawned. Mom is still at the hotel, correct? Jake gave me a look in the rearview mirror, waiting for my response. I took a slow breath. Yes, baby. She nodded. Satisfied. Okay, I'll make a card for her when she gets home. Jake looked aside, did not say anything. I unlocked the front door, and the instant we stepped inside, the emptiness struck me like a truck. The air was also still, like the house. I knew Emily wasn't coming back. Lily took off her shoes and dashed into the living room, eagerly searching for crayons. Jake came in slowly, studying the place as if for the first time. I set my suitcase by the door, exhaled, and then, before I could stop myself, my gaze shifted to the kitchen counter, where Emily's coffee mug sat since the morning she left. Cold, untouched, a remembrance of our life before I discovered the truth. Jake must have followed my glance as he scoffed under his breath. I guess you don't have to make her coffee anymore. I swallowed hard, Jake. It's fine, he muttered as he walked towards the stairs. I'm just heading to my room. I let him go because what could I say that it was not fine? I wished things were different. I wished, against all logic, that Emily had just been a better liar. I closed my eyes for a second. I ran a hand over my face and moaned. Then I looked at Lily, who was already scribbling feverishly on a sheet of paper. Daddy, how would you spell love? My throat clenched. I crouched beside her, brushing a curl away from her cheek. Love you, baby. She grinned deliberately and wrote each letter in large, uneven handwriting. Lovey, she wrote underneath it. Mom? I couldn't help but look away. I couldn't do that right now, not while my daughter was still convinced her mommy was returning. Not when I didn't know how to tell her the truth. Not when I wasn't even sure what home meant anymore. The home was peaceful, too quiet. Jake was most likely texting his friends about how his family had just exploded overnight. Lily remained at the kitchen table, her tongue hanging out in concentration as she carefully drew in the heart she had drawn next to the words, Mom and me. I was just standing there staring at my daughter's exquisite tiny handwriting, wondering how I was meant to tell her that her mother had already left the family long before I found her in that hotel room. I took out my phone. There are no new messages. Emily gave up. No more texting, no more calls, not even a phony excuse. I'm not sure why that affected me harder than everything else. I'd spent years choosing her, our marriage, and our family. And when she realized she couldn't argue her way out of it, she stopped picking us entirely. Daddy! Lily's sweet voice brought me back. I looked down. Her large, round eyes stared up at me, full of trust. When is Mommy coming home? My chest felt as if it were caving in. How do you tell a 6-year-old the truth? How can you explain to her that the woman who tucked her in at night kissed her boo-boos? Who had promised she would always be there? She was not coming back. You do not. Not like that. I crouched beside her and brushed my hand through her hair. Mommy's going to be away for a bit, baby. She frowned. Why? I swallowed hard. Because grown-ups don't always get it right, and occasionally when they make mistakes, they have to find things out for themselves. She thought about her little fingers tracing over the heart she'd sketched. But she still loves me, correct? My breath caught. I forced a smile. She will always love you. It was not the complete truth, but it was her truth. She needed this one, the one she'd keep until she was old enough to realize the true version. She was beaming. Okay then. I will store this for her when she returns. I nodded, my throat too stiff to speak because she wasn't aware. She had no idea that the card she had just prepared would sit on the counter for days, weeks, and months. She had no idea that every morning she'd wake up and hurry downstairs, hoping to see her mother enjoying coffee at the table. She had no idea that one day she would stop asking that. She'd eventually forget she'd made this card at all. And there was the part that destroyed my heart. Because no matter how much I despised Emily for what she did, I despised the fact that she could shatter our daughter's heart without our presence. Here's the next story. We were married for 3 years before we separated. We did not have a nasty breakup, and we are still really good friends. When I was in my late teens, I had 3 guiding ideas that I believed would influence my life. 1, if I married, it would last forever. 2, I would never lend out my car unless it was in bad condition. And 3rd, I would never become involved in anyone else's male-female relationships. By the time I was 27, things were going differently than I expected. I struggled with giving up on Principle 1, but it was ultimately essential. My wife Karen and I were compatible in college, but we didn't recognize that our relationship would not thrive outside of that confined setting. We'd never lived together before marriage, so we had no idea how different some of our aspirations, major interests, and personality qualities were. For example, Karen preferred enjoyable play once a week, whereas I preferred mind-blowing play once a day. We had been married for 3 years before splitting up 18 months before the events of this novel began. We did not have an acrimonious breakup, and we are still very close friends. Really, we are. Despite living on opposite ends of the country, we couldn't make it. I had an easier time giving up on Principle too, but it was still awful. After my divorce, I went to a big city and got my ideal job driving there in my dream car, a Tesla Model X 4-doors, with a 300-mile range between recharges, a top selection for the environment, and 0-60 in approximately 4 seconds. The only issue was that I only drove the car on weekends or for work trips, and owning a car in the city is extremely expensive due to high parking fees at my condominium, city insurance rates, and so on. A co-worker who was experiencing the same issue as me recommended Car Quick, a car-sharing rental service. I listed my car with them 3 months ago, Jerry, and have had no troubles. I bill $15 per hour for its use. They offer $2 million liability insurance on top of my own and 0 deductible comprehensive insurance, and the deals can be done swiftly and easily via text message. They offer me with a basic renter profile and allow me to deny any renter I wish. It seemed good to me, so I conducted my due diligence, including visiting the CarCheck's local office and speaking with the manager. There. She was quite curious that I had an all-electric car so that I wouldn't have to pay for gas, and that the electricity I used to charge my Tesla was included in my condo fee. She proposed that I charge $20 per hour, with the maximum fill-out automobile quick receiving 25% of that, and paying me via direct deposit within 10 days of a rental, as well as being accountable for any deadbeats. I was a little concerned when I rented to the first 2 customers and turned down a third and an 18-year-old. I wasn't trustworthy at that age, and I didn't believe he was either, but I was less concerned about the next 2 rentals. Because a couple of the renters used the car overnight, I made some good money from the deals and no one left any dirt on the floor mats. The sixth possible customer wanted to rent my car on a Saturday, which was one of the few occasions when I didn't need it, as I was taking the metro to a baseball game with a group of friends. I agreed. Julie arrived at my condo about 9 a.m. Her appearance astonished me. She wore a baggy sweater and sweatpants with paint stains on them. Her auburn hair was in a bun on top of her head, with strands hanging out everywhere, and she wore no makeup. She also appeared nervous. She did had a lovely voice and an adorable no. I examined her license to ensure she was who she claimed to be. 2 items stood out. She was 37, yet despite her untidy appearance, she appeared to be younger than 30. It listed something unusual. I stared into her eyes. They were green. So, Julie, why is your eye color stated as diagrammatic on your license? Oh, Jerry, that is embarrassing. It signifies diagrammatic. Okay, I laughed. So what does diagrammatic mean? Oh, sorry, this indicates that my eyes are a different color. They look green to me, I said, glancing at them. I have a colored contact in there. She put her fingers to her right eye, popped out of contact, and then smiled at me. By God, it's gray, I said, peering even more carefully. Even though Julie smiled, I became apprehensive. Her eyes were beautiful, hypnotic, and even mesmerizing. It took all of my resolve to avoid staring as I anxiously groped for my car keys and stammered out, "Okay, Julie, let me accompany you down to the car and show you some odd characteristics." I had no idea why I said it because I had never done that with any other renters and instead relied on CarQuick to provide them with the necessary information. Julie waved politely as she drove away, and I reciprocated. Why do I have butterflies in my stomach? I asked myself as I traveled up the elevator. Julie returned the car early Sunday morning as arranged, rather than simply putting the keys in the lockbox adjacent to my parking spot, which was typical procedure. She carried them up to my condominium. This time, I was the one who looked unkempt, having only gotten up about 15 minutes before she came. She looked very different. She was neatly but casually dressed. Her hair was down and brushed. She was wearing light makeup and did not have any green contacts. Sorry, Jerry. I wasn't sure whether to leave the keys in the box or bring them to you, so I decided to bring them up. Is this okay? I didn't mind seeing those beautiful eyes again, even though I probably resembled Shastras. T. In addition, I was thoroughly satisfied with her current appearance. She had a great physique now that she was wearing clothes that flatter her figure rather than hide it. Her light makeup and shoulder-length hair also looked great with her cute nose and captivating diagrammatic eyes. Sure, no issue, I responded. But I'm sorry I appeared so frightening. Ha, you look considerably better than I did when we first met. If you can bear the horrible view, do you want a cup of coffee? Thank you. Jerry, that is really nice. I surely would, but my husband is waiting in our double-parked car, so I have to leave right away. Why is it troubling me? I asked myself, because I probably had a strange expression on my face. I decided I needed to respond to that. Oh, you own a car? Yes, but my spouse uses it at work every day. I only need one for work every couple of days. And I hope to utilize your automobile again next week. It's a very great automobile. Sure. Please let me know. Thanks. I will be in touch. She smiled and gave me a demure wave. I couldn't figure out why I felt uneasy the rest of the day. Perhaps I knew, but did not want to confess it. Julie rented my car through CarQuick 3 more times, each time making an effort to personally return the keys. The 3rd time occurred shortly after I returned home from work, and her spouse was not waiting for her. I invited her in for dinner. She accepted. I'm merely a competent cook, but I can prepare 2 meals exceptionally well, including mushroom risotto. Do you prefer mushroom risotto? I asked. Can you really make that, Jerry? This is one of my favorite meals. I can, and I hope you're not disappointed. I'd like to know how to make it because I only order it out. Could you show me? Sure, I said, welcoming her inside my condo and giving her a glass of red wine. Julie was quite cheerful and conversational as she watched me make my specialty, asking numerous questions. As some topics came up in conversation, I smiled constantly and cracked a few slightly off-color but entertaining jokes. We had a very excellent supper. I realized around midway through that I truly missed having supper at home with someone else, something my wife and I used to do all the time but haven't done much since. I prepared peach melba for dessert. We had another glass of wine after dinner, and before I knew it, my watch said 10 p.m. Oh no. I can't believe it's already so late. Julie responded when I informed her what time it was. John will be home in half an hour and I need to get there quickly. Where's the nearest taxi stand? I won't let you go out alone at this time of night. I will drive you home. Would you really? That's wonderful, Jerry. It'd be my pleasure. I replied by taking up the automobile keys. Did you fill it up with gas? I asked, smiling. Very amusing, bozo. Julie giggled all the way to her apartment, which was only 3 miles away. I discussed her future use of my car. Look, instead of using an automobile, quickly, why don't you just call me if you want to use my car? We can cut it by 25%. Plus, I'll give you a fantastic customer discount. How about $10 per hour? That is quite generous, Jerry. Thanks. We'll need to share cell phone numbers. I gave her a variation of my business card with my personal mobile phone number and email address, and she wrote her personal information on the back of another of my cards before handing it to me. She put her lips to the front, kissing it. Just so you know who it came from. She giggled. Because I did not write my name on it. I pulled up to her high-rise residential complex. She softly murmured, "Thank you very much, Jerry." That was a genuinely enjoyable evening, and I learnt a lot, including how to prepare mushroom risotto. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I said, my voice cracking, "I will call you regarding the automobile next week. Thank you again." She gave me a short kiss on the cheek, exited, gave her customary demure wave when the doorman greeted her, and proceeded into her building. Update 1. My thoughts was racing on the drive back to my condo. Based on the horns that honked at me, I probably ran a few red lights or stop signs. But I made it back without totaling my Tesla. As I tossed and turned all night, I had to acknowledge to myself that I had a crush on Julie. She was very kind, clever, happy, gorgeous, and playful. I could not help myself. Plus, those eyes were healthy. They were beyond my experience and had completely enchanted me. I pondered if her readiness to dine with me, her lipstick imprint on my card, and her short peck on my cheek indicated that she was also attracted to me. One thing was certain. After she realized I was fascinated by her diagrammatic eyes, she never wore her green contact lenses again. I remind myself constantly during the next 4 days to remember my guiding principle 3, the only one I haven't broken so far. Do not become entangled in someone else's relationship. Julie was married. Julie borrowed my car again on Thursday, and she returned the keys. I hoped she hadn't arrived in running shorts and a jog bra, or that I'd had a pair of mirrored sunglasses on hand. She had to see my embarrassed, wide-eyed reaction to her amazing thighs, huge breast, and slim waist. I was blubbering like a teenager when I spoke with her, and fortunately, she couldn't stay and didn't require a ride. The weirdest thing happened when I went to use my automobile on Saturday morning. A pair of used women's underwear was in the driver's seat. I couldn't believe I had done it, so my first instinct was to sniff them. They smelt like Julie's perfume from the night she stayed for supper. There is no way she could have left it there on accident. I concluded, I now have a problem if I am to follow Principle 3. The matter worsened when I received a frantic phone call from a female early on Sunday morning. "Hello, Jerry. This is Julie. I'm sorry for calling you so early, but might I please come chat to you? I actually cry, sob, and choke." "We have to." "Sure," I replied. unsure what else to say. Do you need a ride? No, I am already in a taxi. I will be there in 5 minutes. I was concerned and bewildered. What might go wrong? That she'd call someone so urgently? And why me? I cleaned myself and my condo as much as I could in 5 minutes. Julie arrived with bruises on her face and arm, and she had clearly been crying. As I ushered her in, I posed the obvious question. What happened to you? I do not wish to bring you my troubles. I just wanted to go out of my place for a while. Hey, I'm delighted to help, but you have to tell me what's going on. I sat her down. She cried some more, and between sobs, she informed me that her husband had recently changed radically and was becoming more verbally abusive. My rational voice kept repeating, Principle 3, Principle 3. But she looked fragile, exposed, and goddamn beautiful. It was obvious that I was going to aid her. All 3 principles have vanished from my memory, having just briefly registered. Also, I despise men who do not treat women well. And in college, I kicked the heck out of a guy who had hit his fiancée in front of me. Julie just had a few clothes with her, so when she'd cleaned herself up, I went her shopping for new clothes. Her personal and joint credit cards had definitely been canceled by her husband, so I loaned her the funds. We went to lunch and then had a stroll through the park because it was a gorgeous day. I didn't want to know the price, so I avoided asking too many questions while we were out. But when we returned to my condo, I had a few very practical inquiries. After she changed into and displayed her new outfits, I sat her down, handed her a glass of wine, and began my inquiry. So, Julie, you're not going back to your apartment tonight, right? No, Jerry. I am afraid. Are you planning to contact the police to report domestic abuse? And what about his revocation of your personal credit card? I am not sure. I need to think it over. Have you got any friends or family to stay with tonight? My 2 best female friends are out of town, and my family lives hundreds of miles away. I'll check into a motel. How will you do it without a credit card? I ask. So I have some cash. I think it's enough for an inexpensive hotel. Let's shift the subject. I found a pair of panties in my car after you used it. At last. Do you understand how they got there? She became extremely red and lost eye contact. I'm sorry. She provided no more explanation. Actually, it made no difference to me because she looked better and more vulnerable by the second, and I was determined to aid her in any way I could. I do not want to embarrass you, Julie. Tell me what? Why not remain here tonight? Do you mind? That would be really helpful. There is one condition, which I repeated with a pregnant pause for emphasis. You must decide before tomorrow at breakfast whether to denounce your husband to the police or take other action. Okay? I promise. Julie, you can stay in the bedroom and I will sleep on the couch. No way. Jerry, as desperate as I am, I will not take your bed. I am remaining on the couch. Also, I'm preparing mushroom risotto for dinner. If you've got the ingredients. I do. I laughed. I watched and spoke with Julie while she prepared the food I had instructed her, only it turned out better than when I made it. As she cooked our supper and we ate, she became more calm, almost cheerful, even revealing her great sense of humor. By the time we finished dinner and had a glass of wine, I'd say she was virtually back to normal. I only had one bathroom, so I let her shower first while I prepared the couch for her. When she returned wearing only a towel, I nearly split my pants. Sorry, I don't have any pajamas or appropriate lingerie, she exclaimed when she observed my wide-eyed reaction. Not an issue. I unconsciously responded. I fantasize of avoiding her completely. When I finally fell asleep, I had the most realistic dream of my life. I had a dream that Julie was Dot as I was lying on my back in bed. I awoke with a start. It was not a dream. They were Julie's. Julie, what the hell are you doing? I asked, praying she would not stop. I also have a confession. I left the panties in your car, as a subtle way of implying that I was hot for you. And if you were as available as I was, it took me about 2 nanoseconds to put her on her back. Epilogue. We got up early the next morning. I had enough foresight to phone the office and inform them that I was taking the day off. Fortunately, my secretary was able to rearrange all of my commitments with ease. She told me that she had Mondays off from work. As we sat for breakfast, we couldn't keep our eyes away from each other. At one point, I sincerely shouted out, "That was the best play of my life, goddess." "If not, you're the world's best actor." She giggled. "You have to understand that it was the best experience I have ever had," she responded, after gushing over each other. I finally posed a realistic inquiry. "So when will we go to the cops? Will you travel with me?" "Of course. I took the day off, and you are off today. So, why not now?" "First, I need to go to my flat and collect my belongings. I will rent a van and a storage unit." I chirped. "Let's dress." We drove the van to her flat. I tipped the doorman, handed him the keys, and requested him to keep an eye on the car that was double parked in front of the building. We headed up to Julie's flat. She opened it with her key, and we went inside. John was present. "Where the hell were you? You never answered the phone," he yelled angrily, approaching her. He noticed me for the first time when I walked in front of her. "John, I'm assisting Julie with her belongings, and then we're going to the cops to report you for domestic abuse. Get out of here until we are finished. Otherwise, the cops will have no reason to pick you up. Just around the corner. I despise guys who slap women around, and I'd love nothing more than to split you in half after staring at me for a few seconds." He called Julie a PCH again before leaving. "I guess there's something I forgot to tell you. That was previously irrelevant, but it could explain why he was so willing to do what I said. I'm 6'6", 260 pounds, and my arms look like I can curl 110-pound dumbbells, which I can." Julie was ecstatic as we loaded all of her personal belongings into the van, drove to the storage facility, stored everything except her clothes and jewelry, and returned to my condo when we returned to my condo. Julie wrapped her arms around my neck and stared at me with her hypnotic, diagrammatic eyes. "Thank you very much, Jerry. I can't believe how kind and helpful you have been, but now I need a place to stay. Have any suggestions? Let me think." I deadpanned, which resulted in a playful pinch on my nose. "Tell me what? You call John right now. Tell him that if he gives you a quick divorce, you will not file charges with the police. And then I'll let you sleep on my sofa." "You're the best, Artie." She laughed. She immediately took out her phone, dialed the call, and smiled as she hit the end button, saying he jumped at the chance. "Now enter my bedroom." I was rudely disrupted. Julie blew my mind that night, and over the next 6 months, we discovered that we were compatible in every way in the real world, but especially plainly. I got out of the car quickly, and now only Julie and I drive my Tesla. When friends or coworkers ask me for advice on their relationships, I consistently walk away or decline, and during our wedding reception. As I groped Julie on the dance floor, she looked up at me with her bewitching eyes. I thought to myself, I'm back to following my guiding principles, and this time I'm not going to give up on them. Especially one, given that she will stop taking birth control tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.